Before Musa was born, the Pharaoh had a dream that a man would overthrow him, and his advisor said he should kill all Israel boys every other year. The year that the Pharaoh ordered the boys to be killed was the day Musa was born, and his mother had a dream that in order to save his life, she would have to put him in a basket onto the river. Soon Musa was in the hands of the Pharaoh's wife, and she instantly fell in love with him. She begged the Pharaoh to keep him, and he agreed. The significance of this part of the story and the reason it's so important is because Allah shows two main concepts. The first concept is when Musa's mother puts Musa in a river and trusts only Allah, which shows she has Iman. If this was asked of anyone today, the answer provided would be "You're crazy," or "I'll never do that." The love a mother has for a child is indescribable, and the fact that Musa's mother had full faith in Allah to put her baby in a basket and onto a lake is amazing. It shows that no matter what the situation we are in, we should always put our faith in Allah. Even if we think it's bad for us, we should remember that only Allah knows best and He only wants good from us. For example, before Musa's mother puts him in a river, Allah reassures her that she will see him again. Instead of asking when or how, she waited, and soon Musa was reconnected with his mom. Another lesson we learn from this part of the story is no one can deceive Allah because He's almighty and all-knowing. The Pharaoh says he's God, but God isn't ignorant, and Allah shows an example of that by putting the thing that would destroy him right in front of him, and he was too ignorant to see that.
Musa AS grew up in the Pharaoh's castle where he was under the queen's care. When he became a man, Allah gave him the power of strength. He was so strong and intelligent. One time, while he was in the city, he saw two men fighting. One was an Israelite and the other an Egyptian. The Israeli man asked Prophet Musa for help, so Musa AS came to the Egyptian and slapped him. The Egyptian died instantly. The next morning, Prophet Musa saw the same Israeli man in another fight with another Egyptian man. Prophet Musa realized that the Israelite was a troublemaker. When the Israelite saw Prophet Musa again, he got scared and said, "Do you intend to kill me as you had killed the man yesterday?" The Egyptian heard what the Israelite said and went to tell the Pharaoh. In Egypt, at that time, the consequences of killing an Egyptian man was death. Somebody heard the news, and fearing the Pharaoh's men, he told Prophet Musa to leave. Musa AS left and started to run in the hot desert to find a safe place. He kept walking until he found a tree near a pond. Here he saw a couple of people watering their animals. He also saw two sisters who could not water their animals. The Prophet went and asked why they couldn't go. The little sister said, "We can't push men." He then asked why they were doing it. They said, "Our father is very old and sick. We have to help him and we don't have brothers or anyone else." So Prophet Musa decided to help them. Afterwards, he went back under the tree and made dua to Allah about his situation. After a while, one of the sisters came back and told Prophet Musa that their father would like to meet him. After meeting the father of the sisters, Musa AS told the man everything, even why he escaped. The man said that he could stay with them, and Prophet Musa was very happy to accept. Musa AS actually went on to marry one of the daughters and work for the father. Many people think that Musa AS' father-in-law was Shuaib AS. Even though there is no solid evidence that it was him, we are led to believe that it is because of many similarities that we see. We learned that Shuaib AS lived in Midian, was a shepherd, and had two daughters, just like the Shuaib and Musa AS story. Though this can be a mere coincidence, I do believe that it was actually him due to these similarities.
During the journey back to Egypt, Musa AS and his family had lost their way. They had to wander in the dark until they spotted a fire. Musa AS went to investigate in the hopes that there would be people near the fire that would direct him towards Egypt and perhaps give him some burning wood to keep his family warm. Something you could take away from this is that here, Musa AS is going back to the place he was exiled from, back to possible life-threatening danger, and he's taking his loved one with him. He could have left his wife with her father, but instead he decided to take her with him. Being in this situation, it's not surprising that he did this, because even the bravest of people would still be fearful of voyaging through a desert alone. As mentioned before, it was dark, likely cold, and they're heading towards danger. This is before he even became a prophet, so he himself isn't even aware that he's going to live and play a huge role in religious history. One of the main things going through his mind was if he could find someone that could provide warmth for his family. But this was people who were from the city he was exiled from. He kills a worker of the Pharaoh, gets exiled, stops coming back, and the first thing he wants to do is ask for help. Of course he was kind to the people, but who would be brave enough to basically defy the Pharaoh and provide shelter for him? His only option would be to go directly to the Pharaoh himself. And without finding the burning bush and officially becoming a prophet, going to the Pharaoh without a goal and asking for help could have meant death. When Musa a.s. approached the fire he was going to take his family to, he saw that it was actually a burning tree. As the tree burned, it became greener instead of turning to ash. Musa a.s. was amazed, and it was at this point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called out to Musa a.s. and informed him that he was actually a prophet of God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa a.s. to go to Pharaoh and invite him to Islam. The Pharaoh was obviously evil and tormented the Banu Israel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the Pharaoh to free his servants and not to behave cruelly towards them anymore. Because Musa a.s. used to speak with a stammer, he was worried that he would not be able to speak to the people properly and asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide him with support from his brother Harun a.s. Allah granted Musa a.s. his prayer and strengthened him through his brother. They then began to have a debate over who was correct. Musa a.s. spoke as an intellectual while the Pharaoh returned his points with statements full of threats and sarcasm. At this point, Musa a.s. decided to ask the Pharaoh if he would convert if he provided clear proof, to which the Pharaoh agreed. We all know that after the proof was provided, the Pharaoh so decided to be ignorant towards the truth. Another important gem to note from this portion is that here, the Pharaoh was provided with the truth but declined. Why? Because his power as a ruler was being questioned. The people of Egypt only followed his rule because they believed him to be a god, as he would often preach. But if he were to be exposed as a liar, what do you think would happen to him? Now imagine that you yourself are in his place. You have everything you could ever wish for and more. All the money, all the power, and all the influence are in your hands, until one day someone tries to convince your people that you are not what they think. It would be terrifying to even imagine seeing everything you've built fall down to the ground. However, this was, I believe, a test by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a possible chance for the Pharaoh to redeem himself. This is something that many people would overlook and deny, just as he did. Without any knowledge of Islam beforehand, do you think he would make a different decision?
As Musa a.s. is going back to Egypt, he has a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is about how he should go to Pharaoh and tell him the truth. So when Musa a.s. reaches Egypt, he goes to Pharaoh's palace and starts to talk to him with his brother Harun. After this long conversation with Pharaoh, Pharaoh still does not believe Musa. And so Musa a.s. says, "Even if I brought proof, will you believe me?" And Pharaoh says, "Then bring it out, let's see." Musa a.s. then throws out his staff and a giant serpent appears. Pharaoh, still in belief, says that indeed Musa is a learned magician, meaning he knows his tricks in and out. Pharaoh then calls all the top magicians in the city and challenges Musa a.s. So days later, the day of the challenge, Pharaoh comes before Musa with about 70 magicians and throws whatever they had, and they all turn into snakes. But as Musa a.s. throws down his staff, it turns into a huge serpent and devours all the smaller ones. This very event strikes fears in all the people's hearts. This is just one of the miracles of Musa a.s. staff. Another miracle is that when Musa a.s. was being chased by Pharaoh, and among him were the Bani Israel, they had come along the Nile River, which at first seemed impossible to cross, but Musa a.s. had struck the ground and the Nile River had split before him. And Musa a.s. followers had safely crossed the Nile River. But when Pharaoh was crossing the river, it closed on him, which caused his death. Musa a.s.'s staff played a huge role in his life, and there's a huge controversy about where the staff is located nowadays. Many people believe that it is displayed in the Topkapi Museum along with the Prophet Muhammad's belongings. The Midrash say that the staff was passed down from generation to generation and was in the possession of the Judean kings until the first temple was destroyed. It is unknown that what has become of the staff after the temple was destroyed and the Jews were exiled from the land. I believe that the museum in Turkey is where the staff is actually located, because they also have many of the Prophet Muhammad's belongings.
Allah revealed to Prophet Musa to take the Israelis and escape from Egypt. Pharaoh and his army followed them in an attempt to capture the Prophet. When Prophet Musa and his people reached the sea, Allah told the Prophet to strike his staff to the ground, and the sea split into two. Prophet Musa and his people then passed through the sea, and by the time that Pharaoh and his army followed them the same way, Allah told Prophet Musa to strike the ground again, and this time the sea closed back up, drowning Pharaoh and his army. There is a great debate as to the identity of Fir'aun. Some identified him as Merneptah. However, most of the evidence backed up by the verses of the Quran pointed him towards being Pharaoh Ramses II. Being approximately 3,000 years old, the body of Fir'aun was discovered in 1898 in the Red Sea at a place called Jabaliyah. The body of Fir'aun was then put on display in the Royal Mummies Chamber of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The body of Fir'aun was amazingly preserved very well, even compared to the other mummified bodies of the other pharaohs. The body of Fir'aun was kept intact, even after being underwater for so many years. In the Quran, Allah says in Ayah 92 of Surah Al-Yunus, "Today we will preserve your corpse so that you may become an example for those who come after you, and surely most people are heedless of our examples."